In the year 2000, he moved to Tusker, then under the stewardship of Jacob Ghost Mule. Here the squad of Robert Mambo, Boban, John Mo Muiruri, Edward Karanja, Abubakar Yusuf, George Waweru, Wycliffe Jumba, the late Albert Njeru, Harun Ndege, the late Victor Waweru, and goalkeeper Victor Onyango gave him chills when he arrived at Ruaraka. This squad won the league and 2 Cecafa championships. Aubare remains the only 2-time all-time scorer for the Cecafa tournament back-to-back. A first one in Kigali, Rwanda. After being benched for 3 matches in the semi-finals, he made his debut in the Cecafa tournament against Rwandan side Mukura FC. And in 10 minutes, Aubare had silenced Amahoro Stadium. In the dying minutes of the game, he had scored what he calls the best goal of his career. Words of description fail this piece. While Mukura FC had fallen to equalize at Tusker's goal, Aubare was lucking all alone in their forward, and Mukura FC goalkeeper had come to the midfield to help push his team for an equalizer. When Aubare got the ball, he just lurked it above the goalkeeper and walked to position 18, as everyone urged him on to score so that the celebrations could take off. The rest is for the eyes. Tusker was in the finals against APR of Rwanda. 10 minutes again, Aubare had shook the net and the stadium went silent. It was his signature header that had put Tusker in the lead. 15 minutes to the dying minutes of the game, Aubare had managed his 4th goal of the tournament and they had won the cup in Kigali, Rwanda.
Aubare, one thing alikuwa nayo na problem ilikuwa training. Alikuwa very lazy. So hiyo kitu ilikuwa inatusumbua sana. Na KCC ilikuwa timu ya workers. So akikuwa na miss tizi inatuuma sana mpaka mimi kama rafiki yake tulikuwa tunakaa na yeye state moja. Nilikuwa lazima niende kumtafuta. Akikosa tizi naende kumtafuta. Sasa kitu alikuwa anatulemea nayo, anakaa huko nje akuji tizi siku 2-3, akichezeshwa anafunga bao. Akichezeshwa anafunga bao. So that was Aubare.
His 2nd Cecafa tournament was in Nairobi. Again, he emerged the top scorer. He is amongst the youngest players to ever adorn the national jersey. In 1994, he was called to the national squad and he was only 19. Harambee Stars was then under the stewardship of Gadasevic Voyo. He was fighting for the striking position with one Michael Koth. He was to shadow Michael Koth in case of an injury. He was young and inexperienced. It was Paulo Chieng and Michael Koth who mentored him. Also in the Stars striking force were Henry Motego, Nick Yakama, and Nikalo Rakech. He never got to play for the Stars on this call-up. Michael Koth never got an injury. After Tusker, Obare moved to Seychelles, where he featured for Lapas FC. Here, he was in the company of Jacob Omondi and Zablon Amanaka, among others. Here he did odd jobs to meet his obligations. He washed utensils and even swept streets. In short, it was not easy, but again, this is not that tale. After 2 years, he was back home. He headed straight to the den, AFC Leopards. The year is 2005. AFC Leopards were going through a major crisis. The coach then was Sami Tabu. AFC Leopards had only 9 players. It wasn't even a team. He remembers how they had to scout for players to fill up the team. To make matters worse, Aubare suffered an injury just a few days to a match. The squad used to be named at Burma Market. In short, AFC Leopards was then a shell of the once mighty Leopards. They managed 11 players and played against Kangemi FC. Aubare scored 2 goals in the first half, and due to the injury, he decided to take a rest. Before 90 minutes could elapse, Kangemi FC had equalized. For an accomplished striker, he could not hold it at the den. In the DR Congo, he was featured for 2 seasons. The war-torn area was not inhabitable for him, and he was back home in 2009. On coming back home, he again settled in the den. AFC Leopards were tailing the league with 10 points. His first game on returning was against Bandari FC. They were beaten 2-0 at Mbakari Stadium. The fan base began to blame the old players that had been recruited to the team as coach Edward Manoa resigned. His next game was against Western Stima at Nyayo Stadium, and it was the AFC Leopards jersey that kept them going. They walloped Stima 3 goals as he scored 2 goals. He was celebrated, and just like that, AFC Leopards were not relegated as everyone had expected.
But nilipata pia opportunity after KCC kuvunjika, ndio akakuja Breweries, akakuja Tusker. By that time nikakuja AFC, kukakuwa na maishu pia huko Tusker akawacha, and then akanijoin pia AFC, tukakutana huko pia kama teammates, na hapo nafikiri ndio tumeendelea kubond kabisa mpaka sasa. Hata hiyo team nakwambia wa veteran huko seniors si ukuwa na yeye. So ni mtu tuko so close, a very good player mwenye alimake jina, a very good striker. But then mimi sijaiona striker wenye tumecheza nao, striker mcourageous kama Aubare. Aubare ni mtu ungepigia cross hata ball 50-50 na keeper anaenda na he makes sure he cross, ana score. So ni mtu ako na character.
Obare's rural home is in Gusii, Gucha, Kenya, Bosoti village. He is a Kisii and not a Luo, as his name would have you believe. Why he never played for Shabana, you would ask. He trained with Shabana during his early days. When the coach had arrived to give his players the day's program, he asked him who he was and later sent him off the pitch to go play with the ball boys by the post, but after informing him that he was good. John Champion was the then coach. And when Mafuko FC made it to the top flight football, Aubare was back home to terrorize Shabana at Gusii Stadium. At home, he announced to the home crowd that their son was back to haunt them. He had scored against Shabana and the fans wanted to know who he was. In short, Shabana fans were chaotic, win or lose. And for all Shabana games, Aubare haunted John Champion with a goal or two. This is not a Shabana story, by the way. Here are his best 11 of all time at Tusker. Victor Onyango in between the poles, Daniel Agina, the late Albert Njeru, George Waweru Kadivu, Wycliffe Jumba, Jeff Oyando, Abubakar Yusuf, Edward Karanja, John Mo Mwiruri, Mashethe, Robert Mambo, Mumbai, Solomon Lubembe, the penalty keeper. At Harambee Stars, Victor Onyango, Victor Waweru, Francis Onyiso, Ali Baresi, Tilen Oguta, Atilo, Josiah Kaki Ougo, Eric Tojo Omondi, Saif Mute, Morris Wambua, John Odhiambo Baresi, the late Ken Simiu, Tom Ogweno, Mohamed Sharif, Mike Mwiruri, under the stewardship of the late Reinhard Fabish. This is the story of one of Kenya's greatest sons, the story of Frankline Obare, Kisii's finest. This is the story of a former Kenyan international. This is the anecdote of Frankline Obare, former Kenyan international, AFC Leopards and Tusker player. This is the tale of one of the youngest Kenyans ever to adorn the national team jersey. This is the narrative of the only player to ever emerge top scorer in the Cecafa tournament back-to-back in progressive years. It's the story of the man who played on the military side as a civilian when it was unprecedented. Here is the story of Frank Obare.